Now it's on.
Last time you had to sit and
I had to go home and repeat it all, so I could send it to all the people out of town. Yeah. So, l'chaim mi ha'etz chaim, to life, from the tree of life. And l'chaim is actually Yiddish, but it takes that word chaim, which is life. You'll often hear it at weddings. So we've discussed this before. What's the meaning of life? What number is it? Is it some deep philosophical question beyond our ability to understand? Apparently it is for a lot of people, particularly scientists and philosophers. In reality, the answer is just so simple and yet so profound. Yahweh, our loving Abba, is not only the answer to this question, but He's also the author and creator and giver of this life. It's not some random theory or a set of numbers, but the answer, what is the meaning of life, is a person, a real living being. He is the restorer of life, the beginning and the destination of life. Because without Him at the centre of our lives, life has absolutely no real purpose or meaning. Bold statement. But it's the truth. I know from personal experience, without Him at the centre of my life is meaningless, going nowhere. The scariest things is when you're controlling your own life. I don't want to ever do that again. I had a lot of crashes along the way. We are not some random accident, some freak of evolutional nature, some colossal cosmic collision of atoms. You like how I put those three C's together? It's just me, I like to do little things like that. So we are not just a colossal cosmic collision of atoms, randomly blundering and bouncing from one chance encounter to the next like a giant pinball machine. Most people in the world actually picture themselves like a giant pinball machine. And they just sort of bounce off one thing onto the other, which is great as long as you're bouncing. But the bad news is that one wrong move, one slip of the flipper, and back down the black hole we go. Game over. But the bad news for us is we don't get another ball. We don't get another chance. But as created beings, we know we're not an accident. We're not some accidental freak of evolutionary metamorphosis. Because when Yahweh finished forming us from the dust and then breathed His life into our nostrils, He then took a rib from our side, not our foot, not our head, from our side, and created a helpmate. Somebody to come alongside us and help us. Not to dominate, not to tread all over us. He created an equal. And then He declared that along with the rest of creation, that we were good and that we were finished. What He didn't do is just create some amoebic blob, piece of jelly in the swamp. Nor did He start with a chimp and thought, let's start with a prototype. We'll start with a chimp and we'll gradually work on it till we get something a bit better. He didn't start with a chimp and eventually end up with a man and woman. He started with man and He finished with man and woman. Complete, physically perfect, ready to function, straight out of the box. No assembly required. Equipped with the ability to reproduce ourselves. It's something we forget sometimes. He didn't just create us, but He created us with the ability to reproduce ourselves. It's amazing. All of this was built into the original program. Had no need for modifications or memory upgrades. No need for modifications or changes. The only things that occasionally need changing is our character and our attitude. That He can adjust. King David in Psalm 139 gives thanks for us all being knitted together and awesomely made in secret. Intricately woven. I love the way he describes it. Knitted together. I've seen my wife knit, and believe me, it's intricate. I wouldn't go anywhere near it. In fact, she taught our daughter to knit, and we used to call it knotting because it was like she had 2 crowbars. There was nothing intricate about it. It was a wrestling match. And the knitting won.
This reminds me of that story, like the creationist, not creationist, evolutionist goes to, he says to a meeting, he says, everything's all random, everything just came in. And this robot goes, look, I have accidentally spilled all this ink onto this parchment and it has written all these words.
Yes.
This is rubbish, it was created. And he says, how can something that is beautiful be random? And as you believe in this part here, it is, created.
I found from experience that if you crash 2 things together, the only thing it creates is a mess. You don't get 2 minis, crash them together and get a Rolls Royce. It doesn't work that way. Strange, eh? And as I say, Matityahu gives me encouragement and confirms that every hair on my head is numbered. Confusion reigns all around us, particularly with all of these things that are happening right now. We've had a couple of generations now, people trying to find themselves. The only good thing about that is they're actually admitting that they're lost in the first place. I've got news from them. There's only one person who can find them, and that's Yahweh. Yes, they are asking questions, but are they the right questions? One of the things I've said before, if you want the right answer, you have to ask the right question. Do they really want the truth? Can they handle it? You know the Clint Eastwood thing? You can handle the truth. Or can they only handle what they want to choose to hear or accept? The whole purpose of any question is to expect to receive an accurate, truthful answer from someone. How many people ask a question wanting a lie? What's the point? You make up your own. If you want to ask a question, it's because you want the truth. And it helps if you've got a person who actually both knows the correct answer and is actually willing to share it with you. But when people ask and then receive a man-made answer based only on inaccurate theories, based on inaccurate knowledge, it defeats the whole purpose of the exercise. And what's even worse over the centuries is that inaccurate theory, knowledge and answer is repeated and embellished. And over a period of time, the truth is left completely further and further behind and in the dark. But of course, many people just hear what they hear and never question it. They never question things because they're afraid to ask. And even more afraid of what they might hear. They're afraid that it may actually challenge and expose the lifestyle that they're living as a lie. Oh sure, yeah, I want to be redeemed. I just don't want to change my lifestyle. Yeah, of course I want to go to heaven, but I want to have fun as well. So if I want to know the exact time, do I go out into the street and ask a random bunch of complete strangers the time? If I do, I'm going to be very disappointed. Or do I go to a proven, reliable source? Somebody that I can trust based on past success and past relationship. Because each of the strangers that I ask will give me a different answer. And they'll give me the answer based on a series of variables in their lives. For a start, are they actually wearing a watch? Or are they just guessing the time? If they've got a watch, is it working? Has it slowed down? Or has it stopped and they've been telling you the same time for the last 20 years?
A stopwatch is corrected 2 times a day.
It's like the Yiddish guy in New York went up to somebody at a set of lights and said, "Do you speak Yiddish?" And the guy said, "Yes." He said, "What time is it?" Just a little joke. Is their watch set to a different time zone? They could have just stepped off a plane. They could be 3 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours behind. What their watch says is where they've come from, not necessarily the time right here, right now. When we ring our kids in Australia, we have to allow 3 hours for Debbie and 3 hours for 3 hours for Debbie and 2 hours for Caleb, because they don't recognise daylight saving in Queensland. So they're always 3 hours, whereas the others are 2 hours and they're sometimes 3. So it all gets very confusing. And in somewhere like the States, you go through a whole series of time zones, which is why parents often get rung up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then get apologised to. "Oh, I didn't realise it was that time there." We've had it when they've been in England or America. And we get this phone in the middle of the night. Or for some bizarre reason, some people may just deliberately lie to me. Or they could just refuse to answer me at all, or to just ignore me. And then of course there's the other lot, that when I ask them the time, they try and sell me a watch. I open up their jacket and there's all the watches. The only thing you can guarantee is that none of them will work, or certainly not for very long. But none of these answers or solutions will solve my problem. And if I accept any of these less than helpful solutions, my planned schedule could be completely ruined, particularly if I'm on the way somewhere and time is critical. And it could possibly change the entire course of my life, because I might miss an appointment. I might miss meeting the person who's going to be my wife or father or husband, or there's all sorts of things that if you're not somewhere at the same time, it could change the entire course of your life. Particularly if I actually continue to base my life from that point on the wrong time that I've been given. I will always be on a different time to everybody else. And chaos will reign. And I'll risk never being able to function properly again. I'll be late for every meeting. So the bottom line is, I need to base my life on a solution that I can trust. A solution based on the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's the same with our lives. We need to base our information on the truth. It has to be accurate. And the only way to get accurate information is to base it on an unchanging foundation, which in this case will probably be an atomic clock, which is a benchmark, an anchor in time to trust when all the other clocks around me are on totally different schedules and tied to a multitude of agendas designed to lead me astray. It's the same with our lives. We have to base our life on the truth. There has to be a benchmark. And in this case, Yahweh is the only unchanging foundation. The only one who says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. But of course that's not exciting, and people want it exciting. And even better, he's more reliable or trustworthy than even an atomic clock. Even an atomic clock only measures what he created anyway. And even that varies by milliseconds each century and can be stopped or destroyed. He is the truth. He is the only benchmark and foundation to set our lives by. He is the compass and the light that guides us along the winding, twisting paths that we go through. He is the anchor that keeps us from drifting away and winding up on the rocks during the storm. The good news is I don't have to guess the answers to life. I don't have to make them up. Because whatever the question is, he is always the answer. People say, but what is the question? And I turn and say, what does it matter? Because whatever the question is, he's the answer. I don't have to seek out self-promoting, self-styled spiritual gurus from the east or the west. I don't have to study mysterious sets of numbers. I don't have to memorize and recite great literature or even scripture, chapter and verse to know the truth. Because the truth is a person. No matter what I know or don't know up here, I can know a person. I can have a relationship. I could be completely illiterate and have a relationship. I could be completely illiterate and still be a father and a son and a husband. It doesn't decide how much love I have to give. Doesn't determine the relationship I will have with those that I am in relationship with. It's a person that I want a relationship with, not a debate. I don't have to punish my body unmercifully, flog myself with a whip, wear hairbrush shirts, crawl on my hands and knees. It is my spirit that needs to come into line, not my body. But it needs to come into line gently and gracefully. I don't have to join some super duper multinational happy clappy signs and wonders mega centre. Isn't that good news? Don't have to watch it on TV either. I don't have to attend some massive, imposing, stone-cold religious mausoleum. But what I can do is go direct to the source myself. I don't have to go through anybody. And I can do it on a daily basis. No appointments, no screening processes, no pat-downs. No qualifications, no apprenticeship, no man-made qualifications. I can just follow the Ruach HaKodesh, who is the Spirit of truth, who will lead me into all truth. And all of this has been authorized by Yeshua HaMashiach, my Messiah, who tells me that it's simple. There is no other way to the Father except through Him personally. So first of all, I need a relationship with Him, and through Him I can have a relationship with the Father. Whether I'm a window cleaner or a member of the royal family, it makes no difference. And because he's my kinsman redeemer, he's given me free access to the Father. Some people, of course, will say they can't hear Abba's answers to their questions. You do know that when you just give him shopping lists and don't get any answers, that's not a conversation. That's not a relationship. A relationship is a two-way conversation. So when you talk to him, you should be listening for answers. And the answers are often more important than the questions. You know the shortest prayer on record? H-E-L-P. Sometimes that's all you can manage. And he will listen and he will answer. My answer to those that say that they don't hear his answers to their questions is that you're probably trying to hear them and interpret them with your mind. And when you do that, all you'll get is static, incoherent noise. You ever tried tuning a radio between stations? So what you really need to do, in addition to the basis of redemption and relationship, is start listening with your restored spiritual ears. How many of you know that your spirit has ears as well? Not just physical, spiritual. That's why he says in there, those that have an ear to hear. It's not a stupid thing. He knows everybody's got two of these. So that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is those that are tuned in hear what I'm saying to you. And when you listen with your restored spiritual ears, they are automatically retuned to the correct frequency. When you get redeemed, the static stops, the white noise stops, and you suddenly find that you're tuned in, retuned to his frequency. And because of that, nobody can say they don't hear him. Everybody has the opportunity to hear him once they're redeemed, because they automatically are retuned to his frequency. People say, I don't believe in electricity, it doesn't work. And I turn around and say, well, turn that switch on. The reason you don't believe in it is because you've never turned the switch on. When you turn the switch on, the light comes on. Then you believe. When you become redeemed and have a relationship with him, the light comes on. The power's been there all along. All you had to do is turn the switch. So you need spiritual headphones, ears to hear and fully understand what he's saying to you personally. And the next part's even simpler. When you hear what he's saying to you, just trust him and say yes. And you say, but I don't know what he's going to say to me. It makes no difference. If you trust him, you'll say yes before he even tells you. Because when he tells you to do something, he's actually expecting you to do what he says. When he says, how he says, and where he says. Remember, we are the inhabitants of an eternal, unshakable kingdom. It's the earth that will be shaken, not his kingdom. It's a kingdom that's already been shaken once. And you say, well, when was that? When 1/3 of the angels came down and the other 2/3 stayed up there. How many people know that it's 2/3 versus 1/3, not the other way around? We're hanging on. We're on the edge of hell. The enemy's going to get us. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end. We are the ones with the majority, not them. We are the ones surrounding him and his followers, not the other way around. And only the things that are not of this kingdom will ever be removed and destroyed. So when when you give him permission and say, please take away anything that's not good for me, and suddenly all your favourite things disappear, don't get bent out of shape. If he ever takes anything away from you, it's something that's not good for you. He will never take away something that's good for you. He will only ever take away something that will destroy you and not be good for you. Because he loves you more than you love you. He cares for you more than you care for you. So things not of this kingdom will be removed and destroyed when it's shaken again for the last time. And all around us things are being shaken. Things that people rely on are being removed. Worldwide denominations will disappear. Put the stones back in your pocket. Worldwide denominations will disappear. Worldwide religions will disappear. I hate religion. Religion is cold and judgmental. Global and national governments will disappear. The world's idols and their worshippers will disappear. But there's one unshakable thing in his kingdom. Only his one new man, his single united body, actively following kingdom principles, will not only survive but flourish into eternity. So if you're on the right track now, it's not going to disappear. If you're on the wrong track, it's going to disappear anyway. So go ahead, make his day. Ask him a question. Anyone you like. Pass on the most difficult questions that people ask you and you haven't got the answer for. And they challenge you with it. You know what difficult questions are for? When I was a non-believer and people came round, they tried to talk to me about things. I had I think it was about 7. I think it came out started with about 3 and worked its way up to 7 questions. And I would ask them that question. And if they got past that, I'd ask them that question. I rarely got past number 3. But I knew that there was always this series of questions that would stop them dead in their tracks and make them go away. It's a defence mechanism. Nobody cares about the answer. They don't care about the answer. They just want to say something that will shut you up and you go away. I don't think I ever met anybody that I got anywhere near 7. But certainly the guys that come to the door, I never got past number 3. That and the hose that I used to threaten to turn on them. Of course I don't do things like that anymore. I bring them in and give them a cup of tea and talk to them. Tell them about the love of Yahweh. When I've got time. People ask you and challenge you with questions, and even if you don't get the exact detailed answer that you or they are wanting when you ask Abba these questions, often they're not the ones that you're wanting or expecting. Why? Because you're asking the wrong questions. You're not going to waste his time on answering wrong questions. But he will point you in the direction of the right questions and the right answers. And some things, I'll be joining a very long line, a very long queue when we get into his presence. I'm not quite sure where I am in the queue, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people there waiting to ask him something. But what about? And why? He will always be the complete and definitive answer to every problem. and every question and every dilemma and everything and anything that ever has or will ever occur, now or in the future. And what he says to you is, ask me in complete and absolute trust. But you need to also receive his answer the same way, in absolute, complete trust. The big question is, will he always do exactly what he's promised? Absolutely. If he's promised something, he will fulfill it. He will bring it about. But he won't always do that for what you've asked. And you say, but I asked him, I begged him, and he didn't do it. Did he promise you would? If he didn't promise you that he would do it, then don't blame him for not doing it. Just because you want it doesn't mean it's right. He won't always do what you ask or how you ask, even if you have got mountains of so-called faith. He will only deliver on what he has promised. So in return, continue to just thank him for his answers and expect to see them happen his way and in his perfect timing. So shalom yedid, beloved, shalom.